So I hope that was good, or is it going to be take two? Let's do it again. No, it's amazing when you know you're being recorded. It makes you a little bit more, not as doesn't flow as well probably. So it's quite interesting. So that's very, very good. Very important that we have the Dhamma in English too, and some of the chantings to make it more meaningful to us. And so we know, particularly with the precepts, what we're getting into, what we're signing up for. But that's not the focus of today's talk. Actually, is going to be about what is the emotional heart of the Buddha's teaching. It's a leading question. Anyone got any ideas? The emotional heart. Because if we say the heart of Buddhism, people say Four Noble Truths. Sorry, somebody? Kindness, exactly. And kindness, the Pali word is metta, isn't it? So I thought to focus on metta today. And what is the most famous teaching on metta that the Buddha gave? Metta Sutta, we just chanted it. It's the most popular too. Whenever we do chanting, if we do chanting, of the Buddhist teachings, they call it Paritta chanting. This is always one that we include, the Metta Sutta, or Karaniya Metta Sutta, it's commonly known as. And of course, what's that? Panya, yes, of course. Panya is the heart of the Buddha's teaching, but not the emotional heart. Because all of us run on emotions. Actually, this is a very important point. If we understand the teachings without heart, without the feelings that go with it, we will not penetrate the teachings. We'll have an intellectual understanding. And certainly the Buddha's teaching, intellectually is very interesting. It's it really draws the attention. You can see the clarity and the incredible consistency and the logical nature of it. But it's the emotions which drive us, actually. And these emotions are the heart of the path, really. They're what power the path. And of course, what part of the path is the emotional aspects? What part of the path includes metta? And it's right intention. Michael has it exactly right. I thought all these years I say the same thing and I still people say, what? Sometimes it's the way you put it too, but that's very true, because right intention, the intention of renunciation, the intention to look for happiness within, not to try and get it from the five senses as we usually do. And the second one, of course, the intention of non-ill will is of course metta and other aspects of positive emotions. And then the last one, non-harming, is compassion and other aspects of that that term. Because the Buddha uses these words like non-ill will. When you hear that, you think, what's that? But it covers all these positive emotions that don't have ill will, that actually reduce ill will. And of course, metta is the supreme one for that. It reduces the negativity in our minds, the ill will in our minds. That's the main point of it. And so this metta, of course, is a very important quality. How we call it too is quite important, because I notice a few translators, they call it love. I don't know what you think of the word love. What do people think of when you hear love? Romance, all those broken heart songs, all those love songs. It goes on and on. But I know these translators use it, and probably to really make us think about that word, because the word love is pretty much loaded in the English language anyway. And of course in other languages it may be different. Though in Sri Lanka I know the word adare is the word for love. And you hear the songs and it's always adare, adare, adare. So love songs are universal. But this is not the sort of emotion that the Buddha is talking about, because he's talking about an emotion that is without boundaries, that is unconditional. Is romantic love conditional? Yeah. If you don't continue to love me, that's over. If you go off with somebody else, that's over. Etc., etc., And so there are many, many conditions, and there are many types of love, but most of them have a lot of conditions with it. Even family love, for instance. I think for many parents, there are limits to their love for their children. Ideally, they would have unconditional love for their children, like Ajahn Brahm mentions. The door of my heart is open to you, no matter what you do, or what happens. But that's not always common for parents to have that approach to their children and their partners. So that word love is probably not so good. This is why in Buddhist speak we have loving kindness. And loving kindness, is that a common word in English? You don't hear people on the street saying loving kindness this and loving kindness that, but it is a word we use to make the difference that this is not the ordinary type of love. And it's a love that has kindness in it. But the translation, the real connection in terms of Pali is with metta. Metta, sounds like it. Sounds pretty similar. Metta means friend. So really, this quality is like friendliness, but unconditional friendliness. Friendliness without boundaries, friendliness without limits. And so I often use friendliness or loving kindness or kindness, never love. I think that's... and so this is a quite an important point for us, actually, to the word we use makes quite a bit of difference. And this teaching of the Karaniya Metta Sutta, where I'm going to look at in a moment, it comes in the Sutta Nipata. Have people heard of the Sutta Nipata? It's all in verse, so it's poetry. And it also appears in the, not only the Sutta Nipata, but in the Khuddika Nikaya, in the Khuddika Pata. If you might have heard of the Khuddika Pata, probably not. It's supposed to be Khuddika Nikaya is the smaller or lesser collection of teachings. It's huge. It's the biggest, because a lot of them are not from the time of the Buddha. And it's sort of like a miscellaneous collection, but it's got some very famous teachings. Dhammapada is in there, the Itivutika is in there, Sutta Nipata is in there, the verses of the enlightened monks and nuns are in there. So this is... so it's a very big collection. Some of it old, some of it more recent. When we say more recent, it's still very old, but nevertheless. So this, the Metta Sutta, as we call it, is something that's worth reflecting on, because it's got some very good instructions on how to develop metta. It gives you an idea, because in the suttas you often hear the Buddha talking about radiating the 4 Brahma-viharas, these 4, as Ayakema called them, supreme emotions, and that's metta or kindness, loving kindness, friendliness. Then, of course, karuna, compassion, or caring, I quite like caring. And then mudita, joy for other people's success and their good qualities. And then the last one, upekkha, which is usually, in English we say equanimity, but I usually say acceptance. And so those 4 qualities are the ones that the Buddha often talks about, radiating them to the different directions. But he doesn't tell you how to develop them. There is not that sort of, how do you generate these emotions of metta and karuna and so on. And of course, that's why we have the Visuddhimagga giving a lot of instruction on metta, and that's what most people will practice, actually, from the way the Visuddhimagga describes it. But I'll go into that a little later, actually, I think, if I remember. So the Buddha, this is actually a teaching where he describes more how we can generate it and gives us some really good clues on how to bring up this emotion. And I like to say that this emotion of metta, of kindness, of friendliness, loving kindness, is natural. The Buddha didn't create it. It is a natural quality we all have. And sometimes people say they don't have it, but they do. I'm pretty sure it's in there. It just needs a bit of encouragement. So this is a natural quality that all minds will have. And the only difference is the Buddha is encouraging us to develop it, to cultivate it, to make it grow, to become unbounded. And that is really something that most people can't imagine is possible, because often we have the idea, don't we? You either have it or you don't. You're either a kind, loving kind of person or you're not. And for many people, the idea of cultivating or developing an emotion, they think, can you do that? Will it be natural? Will it be authentic? And of course, it will become authentic. You will develop and grow and become part of our personality and character. But that's by developing it, by repeating it again and again, inclining the mind in that direction. So this is the value actually of developing a metta. It is possible for us. And so I'll just go through, hopefully get through, yes, get through all the verses, just cover them. So this is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. That's when I thought of doing this translation, I didn't realise how many parts of it are not really literal, and there are other interpretations that are open. It's quite beautiful, this translation. Do you think it's quite beautiful? Yeah, it really flows. It's poetry, but there are some things that Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, for he does one of the Sutta Nipata, and he does this, does the Metta Sutta, and so his is more literal, and I can see the differences between his translation and say this one. And I think this one is done by Ajahn Sucitto. That's what I heard. He did it, and of course, one who is skilled in this is what should be done, karaniya. By one who's skilled in goodness. That's not bad. It could be skilled in atta. It means the goal, who knows the goal really. But goodness is okay. And who knows the path of peace. Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation is more the peaceful state. The peaceful state. What's the peaceful state? Nibbana. It is. So it's really for someone who has actually the word abhisammitya that the Buddha uses here has broken through to it, who really has broken through to understanding the nature of reality, has experienced the Four Noble Truths, understand, and has a glimpse perhaps of Nibbana. So this is really, when you look at it from that angle, it's quite a different take on this sutta. Often people, the translation would suggest that that this is that the person who's practicing needn't have experienced this, but I think this is what it's actually pointing to: a stream enter and above. But that shouldn't discourage us. When I read these qualities that are mentioned in the Metta Sutta, I think, wow, this is what a stream enter is like. But they're qualities we need to develop. They're good qualities in our lives, and they will take us towards stream entry. So this is something to take on board, because there's a very high standard when you look at all these beautiful terms that are in this sutta. So that's it, the peaceful state, nibbana, for the one who's broken through to it, abhisammitya. And let them be able, this is actually a very important quality. Able, sakko, is able in terms of, there's a number of levels to it. Of course, the commentaries will say able in the sense that they haven't committed an act which will prevent them from becoming enlightened in this life. The Buddha says that if we've killed mum and dad, that will stop us from becoming enlightened in this life. If we shed the blood of a Buddha, that will stop us. If we kill an arahant, that will stop us. And also, if we cause a schism in the Sangha, that will stop us. And also violating a bhikkhuni, that will stop us too. And it will give rise to a rebirth in a not very good destination. That's what the Buddha mentions. So that's often what they say about being able. But being able also is about the view we have. If we have the view, I can't do metta, I can't develop metta, I can't develop loving kindness, and you hear people say that. They say, I just don't, it doesn't do anything for me. And of course, if you have that view, is it likely that you will develop metta? Probably not, actually. So this is being able, is also having the mind state that will allow us to develop this quality of metta, allow us to develop the whole Noble Eightfold Path, not just metta. And being upright, this is uju, is very close. I mean, it's more like a moral, a thing about morality, a term about morality. But it's also, when we talk of uju, it should remind us of view too, having uju ditti. This is having straight view. This means somebody who knows the nature of reality. They know the ground, the views that drive the Noble Eightfold Path. They know it from experience. So this is important, being straightforward and gentle in speech, suvacho. So this is important too. And the Bhikkhu Bodhi translates that this quality, gentle in speech, is really amenable to advice. In other words, you can hear when somebody gives you some feedback that you wouldn't necessarily like, but you take on board because you respect them. So this is important. And he says amenable advice and gentle, so a different quality. Gentle mudu in mind, something that is soft. And that's very good for meditation and good for developing loving kindness too. And then he says, without arrogance. And the translation we have is humble and not conceited. That's not too bad. That's reasonable. So that's only the first verse. Let's go on. And then contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. So contentment is a really key quality for happiness in this life. How many of us are content? We usually have with the to-do list is pretty extensive, and we're not content with what we have. This contentment is just a form of happiness here and now. But we all fall, most of us fall for the happiness in the future, the happiness of wanting things. We think, when I get that, I'll be really happy. Whether it's a new job, whether it's something you buy from Chadstone, or wherever your desire takes you. It takes you to the future, not here. And contentment is happiness here and now. And this is fantastic for meditation, because meditation, mindfulness, isn't it? All about here and now, being here and now. And of course, desire or wanting, tanha, is all about the future and somewhere else often. So an easily satisfied, of course, Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation is easily supported. And that, if we're easily satisfied, it means we won't have a lot of desires. It's easier to be content when we are easily satisfied. If we're not easily satisfied, we'll be busy trying to get those things to make us satisfied. So that's, and not busy with duties and frugal in their ways, is a few duties and frugal way of living. That's pretty good. This not busy with duties, I often say to people, are you busy? I say it to myself. And it's a rare person who says, no, I'm not busy. How many of you here, do you feel like you're busy? Do most of you feel like you're busy? Yes? Anyway, actually, go the other way. Who feels like they're not busy? Then I'll say, sadhu, sadhu. I did have somebody come to the monastery at Newbury, and he's from Cobram, and we're talking about, life's busy and so on. I said, are you busy in Cobram? And he said, no. And he was quite happy with it. Sometimes when people say they're not busy, people think, oh, boring. It must be boring. But he wasn't. He wasn't bored. And I thought, wow, sadhu for that, because not being busy is quite difficult in our world. We live in a world driven now by more and more speed. I remember the times, some of you will remember, quite a few of you, the times when we'd write letters, and maybe it would take a week or 2, 3 weeks to come back. And our lives had much less speed in those days. Now, if you don't hear from somebody with an email within 24 hours, you start to wonder what's up, we start to create scenarios, that maybe they're upset with you, or maybe they've died or something, because our lives are so fast, and this speed is also contributing to busyness. We're doing more and more and more. So let's try not to be busy. And the next one, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful. And of course, the Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation is peaceful faculty, so that's not bad, is it? Peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful is a translation of judicious, somebody who weighs things up. And that's the word for nipako. So there we are. And not proud and demanding in nature is, that is, of course, not being proud is important for us, because we cannot learn if we're proud. If we are proud, we already know. And this is very difficult. We're already full with our own opinions and everything. So this is not being proud is very important for us to hear, hear what's going on for others, and hear a teaching, the Buddha's teaching actually, and demanding in nature. This is actually a translation of Bhikkhu Bodhi says, courteous, quite different, and without greed among families. That's very literal, actually, without greed among families. That is for monastics, obviously. We go on Pindapata, we go out, and lay people give us food and other things. But of course, then monastics can get greedy and want more and all this sort of thing. And these sorts of mind states, is greed a good mind state to have? No, it burns us up. Some of it really keeps the mind so busy and agitated. So that's that verse, and then we go on, let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. That's pretty good. And of course, that's a high standard. Sometimes we get very upset when someone criticizes us, don't we? We take it on board. But I say to people, only take it on board if that other person is wise. Someone who has got an understanding of the world. Someone who's coming from a kind place too. Not somebody who's foolish, who's just angry, who's upset with you. Don't take those sorts of criticisms. So this is the wise who are, giving us feedback. And that's for our own benefit, really, if we can take it on board. It's not always easy. So, and then we have, of course, the famous ones, wishing in gladness and in safety. And safety, may all beings be happy. We used to have this, the previous translation. What was the previous translation that we were using? That's it. That's right, Michael. May all beings be at ease. But it's sukhi, sukhitata. And sukhi is like happiness. Sometimes they use this translation, well-being, but ease doesn't do it for me, really. Of course, when we're happy, hopefully we're relaxed as well. But happy is really a much more literal translation than at ease. I'm not quite sure why they chose that translation. And Bhikkhu Bodhi has the same translation. He has, may all beings be happy and secure, because it's actually, the actual Pali is sukhino va kimino hontu. So that means actually what Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it, may they be happy and secure. And then he says, and may they be inwardly happy. Because sukhitata means happy, atta, within ourselves. Happy within ourselves. That's what I think of it as. Why does the Buddha use sukhitata? Some people say it could be a textual mistake. It's actually another word. But I think it's an important point. What do you think the point is? And the point that I see is inwardly or in ourselves is within. most of the happiness that we're going for in life is from the five senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching. Where is that? Out there. And I think that's a very good point to why the Buddha uses sukhitatta and why Bhikkhu Bodhi is translating it as inwardly happy. So there we are. And then I'll just shortly we'll have a metta meditation, just a brief one, just have intermission, I call it. But we'll just go to a little bit further. And then whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small. And that's pretty good, though Bhikkhu Bodhi, he translates it as those, the last section, those that are long or those that are large, middling, short, fine or gross. That's much more accurate. But it's pointing to the fact that we're not excluding any of these beings. It says omitting none. We're not excluding any beings. And I think that's a very important point, because you see in some advice on metta, for instance, and I've heard some modern teachers who say you shouldn't develop metta towards the opposite sex, the opposite gender. Is that limiting the number of people that you radiate metta to? It's 50% of the population. Wow. And of course the point is, no, it's not good to try and spread metta to somebody that you have sexual desire for at that time. It won't always be like that. So I think that sort of teaching is not in accord with the Metta Sutta. And the next verse even goes further, the sorts of beings, all beings, because this is what the Buddha is saying here, isn't it? He says before, may all beings be happy. He's not limiting that. This is unlimited, and this is how we should practice it too. And so the next verse, and I'll do that one too, the seen and the unseen, that those living near and far, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Now that's very interesting, a verse, and of course Bhikkhu Bodhi agrees with most of that. So seen and unseen, it's very interesting. I had never thought of this, but I heard Ajahn Brahm giving a commentary on this sutta, and the unseen, according to the commentaries, is those people that are not in our view. Somebody who's away, or we're here, they're there. That's the unseen. But of course, what I thought of, most people would think of unseen, devas and beings like that. That's what I would think of. Maybe you could say microscopic beings, the ones that you can't see. But that's one of the interpretations. Those living near and far away, that tends to cover those beings that we're close to, they're in our environment, and those that are not. And those born and to be born, those, of course, it's translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi as whether they have come to be, that's very literal, for the word bhuta va sambhavesi va, they've come to be or will come to be. So that's the translation he's got. May all beings be inwardly happy. So this is really pointing to the fact we're not excluding beings from this category of all beings. If it's all beings, can we say, yeah, it's all beings, but not these sorts of beings, those sorts of beings? And we'll go on a little bit later about that, because sometimes people say, and I think the Visuddhimagga says it too, that we shouldn't radiate metta to those that are dead. And that's a common understanding in Myanmar. I remember them emphasizing that. But you don't see it here. Those beings that are coming to be, those beings not that are to be born, these are beings that have passed away. But I think how we can understand that in terms of metta is, if somebody has just died, then it's probably for us to develop metta at that time could be difficult, because that will be challenging, because that person is very close to us. And so maybe this is the way that we can understand that. But what do we usually do for those that have passed away? We dedicate merit. We dedicate merit to them. And this is a form of metta, really. We want to give them, the idea is to give them our good actions. That's what we can't do that. We give them merit, punya. What we can do is, if they can be aware of what we're doing, they can rejoice in it and then create their own mental good karma from rejoicing, and that can take them to a better rebirth, should they need it. Hopefully they don't. So now we'll have the intermission and we'll do a little bit of metta meditation, just a few minutes. It's a pity to talk about metta and never not to do it. So we can close our eyes if we wish, make ourselves comfortable. Come, and we can come into the present moment. And we can relax the body mentally from the top of the head to the tips of the toes, just going through the body with this kind, warm attention, giving it, the body, a mental massage from the top of the head down to the tips of the toes. And it's very, very effective, this relaxation through this mental relaxation, soothing the body. And now we can bring to mind someone who has been very friendly, very kind, caring for us, been there for us, who accepts us, who understands us. If we can think of someone like that. If we can't, we can think of the qualities of a really dear friend, a best friend, who has all those warm qualities, understanding us. We enjoy being with them. They accept us. They have this friendliness towards us, this warmth, this connection. And we can get in touch with the feeling that may come up from either bringing to mind someone who has the qualities of metta, or just reflecting on the qualities of a best friend, the qualities of metta. And if that feeling comes up, it's usually a warm feeling in the chest area, an expansive feeling, which we can, as it were, mentally fill our whole body and mind with. And when we notice the breath coming in and going out, we can combine this feeling that we have experienced, hopefully experienced, as we breathe in, combine it with the breath coming in and combine it with the breath going out. So we're breathing in this friendliness, this warmth, this openness, kindness, and breathing it out to the world. And when we do that, it makes the breath much more attractive. So the attention will stay with the breath, tend to stay with the breath, as we breathe in metta and breathe out metta. And now we can share this feelings, whatever feelings we have experienced, whether they be warm feelings of metta, more peace, more stillness in the mind, more kindness, friendliness, with everyone here, all the beings here, whether they be seen or unseen. And we can expand this sharing of these warm, open, positive feelings further and further around this hall to all beings, human beings, animals, insects, unseen beings, all beings. And we can spread this to the entire world and all realms of existence. And now we can come back to ourselves and just to reflect for a moment on how we feel, what feelings came up, and what caused those feelings to come up. And we can develop the aspiration or the intention to develop more of this friendliness, kindness, loving kindness in our speech, in our actions, and in our minds throughout the day, 24/7. And now we can anchor that feeling of metta in our hearts and slowly open the eyes and we move the body. So, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So hopefully that was a taste of metta. It's much better than all the words. And the technique I'm using there is very similar. In a way, it's a combination of the Visuddhimagga and also the Buddha too. In the Visuddhimagga, you start with yourself, number one, and then you can start with a respected person. This is a very good idea. You can even start with them first, I think, a respected person or someone that you feel very grateful towards. It's very easy to generate emotions, positive emotions towards somebody who's been really helpful to us. And with that gratitude, that feeling of gratitude, very close to metta actually. Then the Visuddhimagga, it goes from, as I said, first ourselves, a respected person, then someone who's very dear, someone that is neutral, like an acquaintance, and then someone that we consider to be an enemy, and then to all beings. And so that's the way the Visuddhimagga does it. The way the Buddha normally does it, you develop the metta, get it going, and then you start radiating it according to, the clock. We do it to the north, to the east, the quarters of the directions, and you do above, below, across, and unbounded. This is the important thing, aparimanang. So this is how the Buddha would do it. So it's a combination of starting with ourselves, bringing up that metta. That's what I do, using feelings. You can use words, and plenty of words to use. If they bring up metta, great. Sometimes people can use images, and there are other concepts too, like the opening the door of your heart, the Buddha, the Ajahn Brahm uses. You can use things like imaginary pets. Ajahn Brahm uses imaginary kittens, if you like kittens, to bring up, to start that fire of metta. And then the way I do it is to then start radiating it. After you've really got it going, I combine it with the breath so that it increases the attention we give. So there's more power of samadhi and more metta too. So the more the mind comes together, the stronger the metta we should be. And of course, the person who has real strong samadhi, if they spread metta, wow, it's can be dynamite, I think. And I remember my first teaching in Western Australia. I was very nervous. It was the first time I had taught a meditation evening at the local meditation group. And I was only about 3 or 4 years as a monk. And I'd said goodbye to Ajahn Brahm, had a cup of tea and went that evening to the meditation group. And I'm doing the introduction to the meditation, and I get these waves of metta, just 240 volts, I call it, going through the body. It was just incredible. I thought, where is this coming from? And of course, I thought of Ajahn Brahm. I thought he's sending a spot of metta to me, charged with samadhi. Could be, don't know. So this metta, sometimes people think of it as soft and woolly, sort of a nice emotion, but it's actually a very powerful emotion, an emotion that can take us all the way to enlightenment. Because once somebody's experienced the purity that can come of developing metta to the jhana level, to the deepest levels, come out of that, and then they can have insight about that experience that leads to the breakthrough, to awakening. That's the upper level. So now I'd like to just finish off with the rest of the verses if I can. So, let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. So these are negative states we can let go of that will actually encourage metta. When we want to deceive somebody, is that a wholesome quality? Is that a positive quality? No. It's pretty nasty, actually. But sometimes, isn't it? We're deceiving ourselves. That can be equally bad, actually. Or so this is a quality that's not good for developing metta, as is despising other beings, looking down on them, And as often is pointed out, whatever beings we see experiencing whatever problems they have, we see a lot of people with mental health problems these days. I hear people who travel on public transport say it's becoming more and more common actually to see people with mental health problems. And not to look down on these people because we have probably been there in our past, maybe not this life. Who knows, we may go there in the future, even in this life. So not to despise any being at all. And of course, if we despise beings, can we have metta for them? Can we have that friendliness and kindness? We probably pity them or look down on them. But we would not have metta for them. So this is a very important quality to let go of. And it reminds me of, when I chant that chant, may you abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may you maintain well-being in yourselves. When we let go of these negative qualities, being free of these, wishing to be free of these negative qualities is metta. So if we can be free of these qualities of deceiving ourselves or others, free of despising other beings, and particularly to be free of anger and ill will, they're not good qualities to have. They feel awful too. And wishing harm upon another, then we can really develop metta. These obstacles are out of the way. And then it continues, even the famous, this is a very important simile actually, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. This gives you a way, gives you a sort of an idea of the emotions involved, doesn't it? Because we all know that mother's love, parents' loves in general, is so strong that it is willing to sacrifice a lot for their children, give a lot. And you see parents do, they do indeed. So this is a quality that gives an idea of the emotion of metta, this quality that is connecting us with other beings, concerned for their well-being, and willing to sacrifice our lives. And so, but it's not only our child, it's for all beings. So we have this mind of a mother, for all beings. All beings are our children. And that is somewhat different from just my child, because if we have the idea of usually our love for our children is our children. The neighbour's children? Well, not so much. We care about them, but not quite like that. And the very important difference that in this, the boundless heart is a lovely way of putting it, but that's actually a translation of a state of mind without boundaries, aparimanang. So it's a limitless mind. In Sri Lanka we have a store, isn't there? A clothing store called No Limits. I don't think it's about metta. It's about clothes, selling clothes. No limit. I often say no limit for craving. Go in there. They want you to buy as much as possible. So that's a very important image for us. It shows us some of the ways we can develop metta and to be creative. It'd be easy for some to develop the idea of being a mother. It depends on your relationship with your parents, actually. If you've had a bad one, mother's love maybe not so easy. So that gives us an idea of how to create, how to bring up this emotion. We're not creating, we're just bringing it up, really. So that's important. And then it continues. This is the only time in the Metta Sutta it mentions metta, in this verse where it says, Mettancha samalokas. That's the only time. The rest of the time it's sort of alluding to it. And this is radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. So this is, again, Bhikkhu Bodhi emphasizes, it's a state of mind without boundaries. That's the important thing. We're not discriminating with different types of beings. It's unbounded. It's universal. So this is the point of metta. It's unconditional. It's not putting conditions. And then the mind can become this vast mind. All that's in the mind is metta, friendliness, kindness. And you can imagine a mind like that. Wow, it's extraordinary. Very, very powerful state of mind. And Bhikkhu Bodhi mentions, as I said, a state of mind without boundaries, above, below and across. And it's unconfined. This is what he uses. This one uses unbounded. Unconfined, it's extended to all beings. And it's without enmity, without ill will. And there is without adversaries, it says, without enemies. So it's a mind that doesn't distinguish between those people we like and those people we dislike, and all the other beings, the ones we like and the ones we don't like. Cockroaches are included, and the ants and all those pesky beings that we have in our lives. And then the Buddha continues, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. And Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, very similar. So what is it saying? If we're standing or walking, seated or lying down, any other postures? It's saying 24/7. We need to develop metta. It means that we develop metta not only on the cushion. When we're sitting down, sometimes people will walk. We're developing metta in every posture, all the time in our lives, through our actions, through our speech and our minds. So it's quite a tall order, isn't it? But it is actually where we can, sometimes we don't think we can develop metta, friendliness, this loving kindness in daily life. Whatever we do, however we interact with others and ourselves, we can develop metta, that kindness for ourselves and others. And of course, free from drowsiness, because if we're drowsy, we can't. Our state of mind, is our mindfulness good when we're drowsy? Not really. It's not there. And then the Buddha mentions that one should sustain this recollection. This recollection is like a mindfulness. So this is a form of mindfulness. When we keep friendliness, kindness, loving kindness in mind, keep that in mind through our speech, our actions and the mind, then we are sustaining that mindfulness throughout the day. And then it becomes this sublime abiding. This is like being in heaven. Somebody who's got really strong metta or friendliness, kindness, they're in heaven. There we are. And then the final verse, we're almost there, the home stretch, is by not holding two wrong views, the pure-hearted one having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. And the more literal translation is by not taking up any views. But usually when we mention views, when the Buddha mentions views, he means wrong views. So this is why this translation, the one we chanted this morning, says wrong views. But that's a little different. And then where it says the pure-hearted one, that's a poetic way of saying possessing good behaviour. Silawa is somebody who has very good ethical behaviour, a solid base to life. You know, they know what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. And so this is a very important quality for the mind and for meditation. And then being freed from all sense desires. Once one is, of course, that is the ending of wanting, craving, all those things. And that is the breakthrough to enlightenment, understanding the nature of reality. And Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, he adds something that is quite good, having removed greed for sensual pleasures. So in other words, everybody, when a person becomes enlightened, will they still be seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching? Probably when they come out of the experience, they will be. So they'll have sense experience, but they won't have a lot of greed, wanting particular sense experiences. Usually, the sort of sense experiences we want, all the good ones. Forget all the negative ones. We don't want those, what we consider to be negative. Other people's may like them. And then, so this is somebody who has, you know, the mind is totally pure, and because of that purity, they have clarity of mind. It mentions it here, having clarity of vision. They can see the nature of reality. Their view of reality isn't skewed by liking, disliking, by bias, all those things. They can see the nature of reality. And the nature of reality will always be the same. It'll be the Four Noble Truths, and at essence, it'll be the nature of impermanence, you know, the temporary nature of things, the changeable nature of things, the fact that things can never be completely satisfying because they can't stay that way. Because of impermanence, can you get things to be completely satisfying forever? That's what we want. You know, when people go into relationships or whatever, they want this to be forever. Is it forever? Well, not really. It changes. It's the nature of it. And of course, the Buddha points out, if things are impermanent, what about this I, me and myself? And of course, that is impermanent too. That character, personality we have will change, hopefully for the better. But so this is the nature of reality. This is a clarity of vision. And as I said, being free of sense desires. This is the main thing that keeps us getting reborn. We want to come back to experience everything we've found pleasant in this life, everything we're attached to. So that is being freed from sense desire. Is not born again into this world. The more literal translation is, and never again comes back to the bed of a womb. And that slightly different translation means that the person who has become enlightened, achieved a stage of enlightenment, experienced or realized a stage of enlightenment really, will not necessarily be reborn as a human being, or a being that needs to have a womb. It could be reborn as a deva, it could be reborn in a Brahma realm, very high realms, where birth is not related to being born physically in a womb. It could be a poetic device too, but I think it points to either being a non-returner, the second last stage of enlightenment, or being an arahant. So it's quite like very close to finishing the work, finishing the business of being born again and again. So I'd like to finish there a little bit over time, and now open up for questions, comments, or complaints. Just where you say, I totally disagree with that interpretation. So there we are. So it's that. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Ajahn. Now we come to the question time. We alternate the question
Dr.
between
Jaya.
in the hall and online.
Dr. Jai beat you to it. Okay.
There we are. So hopefully we have a little bit of time. Then we have the announcements at 1:45.
Yes,
Dr.
Ajahn,
Jaya.
a couple of things on the literary translation.
Yep.
Unburdened with duties is one previous translation,
Yes, that is.
which has not now become not been busy. I prefer the unburdened with duties is more accurate,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people who are busy running around without nothing in the mind.
Right.
But unburdened means the mind is cluttered with responsibility, overburden. You may not be busy doing anything. So that person can't develop. Your mind is bombarded with responsibility, having to do this, looking after children, doing a job. So I think that is more accurate for a person who is using the mind to develop, rather than using the word busy.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Pali, it's apakicho chasalo hukavuti. Apakicho means few duties, and what Bhikkhu Bodhi mentions is few duties, and apakicho. No, that's few duties, apakicho, and salo hukavuti is frugal, a frugal way of living. I think that translation actually is not accurate, unburdened with duties, because you can say that, but actual fact, if we're very busy, it makes it very difficult to develop the path. It makes it very difficult to hear Dhamma. The mind is taken up with those duties. I know you say unburdened. The idea, this is Ajahn Brahm had this comment years and years ago. He said, unburdened with duties means you can have a whole lot of duties as long as you're not up, it doesn't disturb the mind. And that is very unlikely. That's the high end of Dhamma, actually, if you can do that. And I think that's ideal if we're untouched by the experiences of, having a lot of responsibility. But the Buddha is actually encouraging us to have few duties. This is apakicho. So I think that translation, unburdened with duties, Ajahn Brahm always said it was because to justify the fact that most of us have a lot of duties, but we should just have a good attitude about it. But in actual fact, when the Buddha encourages us to go to the forest, for instance, he always encouraged meditators to go to the forest, and to have a lot of solitude and seclusion. That is so that we don't have a lot of duties, responsibilities. And that's important to put those down, because those duties and responsibilities really drive a sense of self, actually, and they keep the mind busy. They keep the mind going out to things. The five sense world is about the duties and responsibilities we have. So it's the sort of thing that will, we will have responsibilities and duties. Absolutely, we have to deal with that, but not to encourage it, not to make it the main area where our minds go to all the time, because that's where it'll go. When we sit down to meditation, we'll go to the duties and responsibilities. I know you're saying unburden, and I know that translation, but it doesn't agree with what the Buddha says anyway. That's anyway one thing, Dr. Jaya. Yeah.
Other thing is that not born again into this world.
Yes.
I see that although it is a literal translation, is not born again into a womb.
Yeah.
I see it is more like attained nibbana, because if you look at the Metta Sutta, it gives the starting point for a practitioner to develop towards nibbana, and it also shows the nibbana at the end. So let's say the priti, the ultimate friendliness. metta,
Yeah.
you see everybody as friends.
Yeah.
So which means you don't have enemies,
Yeah.
you are secure,
Yeah.
you are peaceful,
That's right.
and the mind becomes happy.
Yeah.
The happy mind becomes tranquil,
Yeah. That's it.
can be concentrated,
Yeah.
can be developed,
Yeah. That's
can
it.
see insight and lead to liberation.
Yeah.
At the other end, if you don't not separate from one from the other, as Metta Sutta says, those who near and far away, seen,
Yeah.
unseen,
Yeah.
small, big, which means you don't separate one from the
Yeah.
other.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you don't separate one from the other,
Yeah.
you don't separate yourself from the other.
That's a good point. Yes.
That means you don't exist as a separate entity.
Yes.
That is anatta.
Yeah.
And that is the end point of Nibbana.
Yeah.
So this sutta gives the starting point of the practice up to the end of practice,
Yeah.
Nibbana.
No, that's a very good point, Dr. Jai. I think most of the Buddha's teaching does that. It gives you the starting point because the Buddha's teaching is about cause and effect. So you get the initial causes in place and then the rest of the path can develop from that, taking you right to enlightenment and Nibbana. So the beginning point really is always going to be some degree of right view, understanding the nature of reality. And so this is a very important starting point. And you see that at the beginning of this sutra, actually, that right view, uju, straight view. All right, thank you very much for that. Very good. No?
Thank you, Ajahn. A question from online.
Yeah.
Are we being fair to ourselves when we develop metta to someone who continuously to deceive and steal from us?
Oh, wow. Deceive and steal from us. Wow.
Sometimes thought of ill will arise when we are not mindful. How to deal with this?
Yeah. The way to deal with that, I feel, is to have the metta towards ourselves. Sometimes people try to have the metta for the person that's really upsetting them, in this case, deceiving and stealing from them on a more or less ongoing basis. And that's a tall order, but we need the metta, actually. We need the friendliness, the kindness. And when we have that for ourselves, then we can, react to that person in an appropriate way. Sometimes metta is not always saying yes. It's sometimes saying no, actually, but saying no in a good way. Not saying no with a lot of anger and ill will and vengefulness, getting back at them or whatever it is. But then, sometimes to have that metta that gives you the strength to say, yes, no, we cannot continue like this, if you're deceiving me or stealing from me. And, to do it in a way that's coming from metta, not coming from fear, not coming from anger. They're both not good states of mind to talk to somebody about a problem. But definitely first aid, emotional first aid, ourselves. So that's what I'd suggest. So I hope that's helpful for that person. Sounds difficult, that situation. So now is time for Do
you think we can get one more question in, Ajahn?
All right, yeah, very quick one.
Is it a quick one?
All right, for James, there we are. I apologise to those online that have probably got lots of questions. Yes, James.
Morning, Ajahn.
Good morning. Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you. It's more of a speculative discussion point that I would like to raise.
Yeah.
You mentioned that when this entity's re-entering the world, they don't necessarily need a womb to re-enter the world. And in the Catholic tradition, it says that the Lord Christ is of the Virgin Mary.
Yes.
Are they referring to the same sort of thing? Do you know? Would you think?
Not really, because still the Bodhisattva, he was born from a womb, had to be born from a womb. So he came to lie in a womb again. So it's a sort of a different. It's still a womb, So the idea of the virgin birth, about how the conception took place, is is another thing altogether.
So there's no connection between
Not
your
really.
reference this morning and that.
Not that I can't see it, but because mainly birth without a womb is birth that's related on mental states. So a deva's mind, they have spontaneous rebirths. In other words, when they pass away from this life and they leave this life, then they will appear in a heavenly realm or in a Brahma realm or even higher realms. So, and also for beings that are ghosts, they don't have a womb that they're born into. Very interestingly, Ajahn Brahm was talking about the ghost realm, and he said it's probably the largest realm in existence because we hang on to we're attached, so we hang on to things. So to be reborn as a ghost is quite a lot of potential because of that attachment and clinging, and also beings that go to animal realms, they go into a womb. But for hell beings, that's not a physical rebirth. So it doesn't quite relate.
All right.
Yeah,
so would you say that Catholic line of the virginal birth is a bit of a misleading?
No, I think it's quite a common idea in many different traditions, actually, that birth of that child was so special that it didn't need a human element for conception to happen, or perhaps it's conceived as God. I think there are even, for the Buddha, there are even, as a bodhisattva, even ideas like that too, but he doesn't really subscribe to them.
But then promoting that idea that being is special by saying, isn't that a misconception if that's the reality of what's needed?
It is if it's done. Well, it's actually if it's done to mislead people. Yeah. But I think it's always something we can leave open to speculation. Really.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank
we
you.
better change. Have the announcements.